I can directly attribute at least $1 million in sales to this funnel.
Hello and welcome to Funnel Masters, the show where top marketers expose the inner workings of their sales process and share their best takeaway tactics so you can replicate it for yourself. I'm your host, Andy Fletcher, and today's Funnel Master created a wildly successful contest app and has used the proceeds to found his own autoresponder. In this app, he shares how he built his funnel piece by piece to over $1 million in sales, his $97 upsell that consistently converts over 15%, and his email strategies that increase open rates by as much as 25 times. Here to tell you all about it is Funnel Master, Travis Ketcham. Hey Travis, thanks so much for coming on Funnel Masters today. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Pleasure to be here as always.
Cool, thank you. So as always on Funnel Masters, we don't beat around the bush to start with. We're going to dive straight in. Tell me, what the funnel? What is it we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite funnels from one of my favorite products, Contest Domination, where I kind of got my start. Some people understand how it started, but I think most people don't understand where the bulk of the revenue actually came from over the last few years.
Cool. So you say the bulk of the revenue. When we're talking revenue, how much did it make? Feel free to boast for just a moment. I know you're a super humble guy.
Yeah, so this one's a little bit hard because it was sort of a long-term strategy, but I can directly attribute at least $1 million in sales to this funnel. But I'm quite confident that it has sort of a halo effect and actually generated even more revenue outside of that. I just can't directly draw a line with a pencil and say this revenue came from that funnel.
So only $1 million. There's quite a lot of jealous marketers listening to us.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was over a couple of years. Compared to the marketplace, that's sort of small, but I'm happy with it considering we spent $0 on advertising.
Fantastic. Okay, let's dig into it. So tell me a bit more. What is Contest Domination? What's the product? What's the offer? Talk us through it.
Sure. So Contest Domination is our contest, viral contest app. It started back in the early days in 2012 as a WordPress plugin and then turned into a SaaS in 2013. And so there was a launch at the beginning of each of those, but then it went into more evergreen stuff. But the core concept of Contest Domination is basically it's a list building tool, right? So you run a contest, people enter, and they're incentivized to refer people into the funnel through unique links, at which point it awards additional points and helps the person running the contest avoid fraud, subscribe to their mailing list, and pick winners.
Excellent. And what's the offer surrounding it? So what's the price point? What's the entry section look like?
Sure. So there's the normal SaaS funnel, which has free trial method and either pay per use, so pay for one contest, or pay a subscription. The funnel that we're really going to talk about today, though, that really helps sort of light things on fire for customer acquisition, was a mix of courses at $10, $97, and then it upsold to a subscription to our tool and downsold a one-time use of the product. So anywhere from $10 one time to $360 a year was the funnel that we're specifically talking about.
That's excellent. So was the entry point always the same, or would you driving traffic to different points in the funnel? How did that work?
So I'm not very creative or very smart sometimes, I feel like. So what I did was originally I failed. And I originally failed because I had created a course that was pretty comprehensive. It was called Contest Marketing 101. It was actually fairly comprehensive and it was only $10. But what I found was I built this course, made it cheap, and no one respected it. No one really made it past video one. So I thought, well, Travis, that's not so smart. So let's try breaking this up a little bit. So I created a free tool called the Contest Funnel Formula, or free training called the Contest Funnel Formula, which then went to a $10 contest execution plan, which was just one basically small segment of what had been my complete course for the same $10. And then I took the other concepts and created a $97 training called the Contest Sponsor Method. So it had its own defined hook as opposed to just being one little module, right, in the bigger course. So it really set them up in such a way that indoctrinated them to the contest methodology as far as how we thought about it.
Wow. Okay. So how did you go about developing that? What was the thought process?
Well, we in software, we always talk about minimal viable product. And I think the same can really be said of funnels and content, premium content, to be honest. I knew I wanted to go this direction, but it was going to take some work to really polish it up. And so I wanted to even see if my hook was right. So the first thing I did is I made the free lead magnet. Worked out okay, but I had no offer behind it. It was just, thanks for getting my free lead magnet.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, well, now we got to make the next step, which is the contest execution plan. And there's a little $10 thing, but had its own little membership. So I just built that. So for a while, it was lead magnet just to a $10 thing. And then I said, okay, now let's build the second piece, and so on and so forth. But this actually took the course of months, because I'm a full-time software guy, right? Like, I'm running a software business. This is an important piece, but it wasn't the only piece that I had to do. So for quite a while, there was little fragments of this in place. It wasn't actually built from day one. I wasn't like a mastermind that got it right out of the gate.
And so you were driving traffic to the opt-in, and then they see the like $10 training module after that.
Correct. Yeah. So on that $10 page, at the very top, it would say, thanks for requesting your PDF. It'll take 5 to 10 minutes to send to you. And I had an intentional delay in there. And it said, while you're waiting, read this letter. And I was like, dear marketer, $10 lead magnet sales page.
Very cool. And were you paying for the traffic that went there, or were you driving it another way?
So just to start, I put a little opt-in box, on our site with our organic stuff because we had a trial, but that obviously only converts at a certain percentage. And I wanted to give people another opportunity to connect with us somehow. Because you think of a trial, you think like, well, is a credit card required? Even though it said it's not. Like, there's some apprehension about starting your trial now, because then it might go away. You might not quite be ready, but you're in the educational phase. And so at that point, it gave them a different offer. Eventually, what I ended up really running away with this on is actually through podcasts, because usually at the end of a podcast, you say, what's the best way to connect with you? And now I had this free thing that I could drive them to specifically. It says, I'm so glad you asked. People that are interested in learning more about contests, I actually put together a free document for you called the Contest Funnel Formula. Go here to download it.
That's fantastic. So do you remember what percentage of people that opted in ended up buying the $10 product?
I want to say it was higher than I expected. Like around 5% bought a $10 thing.
That's very cool.
Pretty solid. I mean, I think it fluctuated, 3%, 5%, 6%, but I think it ended up pretty close to 5% on a really simple, didn't really edit it that much later. Didn't optimize it. Just, yeah, here's my offer. Take it or leave.
Excellent. I mean, considering where this all ended up, that's an amazing start. So so we've got free opt-in, a $10 tripwire product. Where's the funnel go from there, and how did you develop it?
Sure. So it was a one-click upsell, downsell funnel. I used various different checkout tools, because I actually switched midway through this thing. I had to recreate it on a different checkout tool, but I guess that's sort of proof that so many tools can do the same job. But it was a one-click upsell. So after they put in their credit card for the $10 thing, they got an upsell video, which was just a really simple, hey, thank you so much for buying our execution plan. You're super close to having a dialed in plan on exactly the right kind of contest you need to launch. But one thing you're going to need is traffic for your contest. So a lot of you are afraid of spending money on Facebook ads, or you've done it in the past and you felt burned. So I was kind of leaning on that hook. And our best customers actually have a secret that they're using to drive traffic, and they're spending little to no money on ads, or they're convincing other people to pay for the ads for them. And that was sort of the hook. And it was called the contest sponsor method. And it was 3 unique ways that they could basically convince sponsors to pay for their prize, send them free traffic, or pay for their ad spend. And that was a $97 upsell.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. So, and what was the conversion jump there? So you've got about 5% of people taking the $10. What percentage of those go on to take the 97?
Yeah, I believe it was about 15 to 20% took that $97 upsell.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So, I mean, that's getting a better response rate than even the front end, like payment part.
Yeah, I mean, because they'd already agreed to pay us something, and then it was like, oh, I'm interested in contests, and then it's like, oh wait, you're right, I do need traffic, and I don't know Facebook ads. This sort of like scratched that underlying itch, maybe even a preconceived objection they might have to buying our software tool in the first place. I was saying, hey, that thing? I've got the perfect solution. I'm going to show you exactly how to do it for a one-time fee.
Yeah, and at 10 times the price, that's what really jumped out to me. I think a lot of people see upsell and they're thinking a little bit more, but like literally going $10, $97.
I think the reality is it's always a question of value, right? Like what would you, how much value does the user get out of it? And for me, it was really easy to anchor the value, because it's like you could go blow $500 or $1,000 on Facebook ads without knowing what you're doing, and you'll be out 5 to 10 times what I'm asking for this training. And I can save you from all of that pain and agony and almost guarantee you success if you follow this blueprint. And so in their mind, it wasn't, oh, this is 10 times more than what I just paid. This is 1/10 of what I would pay and maybe not get any results.
That's a very cool way to look at it. Okay, so we've got a free opt-in, $10 tripwire, $97 like more full training. Where does the funnel go from there?
So from there, we actually jumped to one of our more popular plans on Contest Domination, which is a $360 a year plan, which that price is a 25% discount from what it normally costs. Like if you go to our pricing page on Contest Domination. So it's, hey, you're here and I want to reward you for being an action taker. So I want to knock 25% off of our subscription price that you retain for as long as you remain a customer. It'll allow you to run unlimited contests with unlimited entries and unlimited referrals, right? So you really kind of juice it up, even though it's not our fullest featured plan. It's enough featured that they feel like they're not limited because they're not. And it still leaves room down the road that they may actually want to upgrade and pay us more money for a different plan, but it tries to get them to bite on our annual subscription, $360 a year.
Does everyone see? So if let's say they take the $10 product, do they always see the software, or do they only see it if they bought the $97 one?
Yeah, so everyone sees the software, and I highly recommend that if you have training and software, that you always show it to even just the $10 buyer, because in our scenarios, I was really impressed when people would sort of mix and match the funnel, right? Some people would buy all of the training and none of the software. Some people would just buy the $10 training and then they would buy the expensive software. Some people would buy all the training and the cheap software, right? So it's like there was every mutation possible. And so I want to let people sort of a la carte pick and choose what fits them the best. If they want to spend money on one thing and not the other, so be it. I'll be here to take it.
Cool. And is that the end of the funnel? Is that the pinnacle product? Have you got a big ticket training course after that or anything? Or is that we're trying to get them to buy the software?
Really simple, really unsophisticated. The only thing I had on the software one is if they said no to the 360 a year, the downsell was, look, you obviously want to run a contest. Maybe you aren't sure when you're going to do it. Maybe you're not ready to commit to a subscription. Maybe it's only ever going to want to be one campaign. That's fine. I understand that. We have the perfect product for those of you who want to hang on to it or only have one campaign. It's called Contest Domination Solo. You get a single credit to run a single contest. No limit on referrals, no limit on entries, but it's only for one campaign. Normally it's $100. Today it's $77 one-time fee.
Cool. And what are the conversion rates like on first of all, on the $360 subscription and then on the $77 downsell?
Yeah, the $360 a year subscription was pretty low, as you can imagine, because it goes from one-time training fees to a recurring subscription. But it was around 4 or 5% for the $360 a year.
Wow, that's still really good. Considering that's again, as you say, going from one time to recurring, that's normally an absolute killer. And do you know what percentage took the downsell?
Yeah, the downsell was actually pretty strong. I want to say it was around 15% on the $77 one-time thing. So that was fantastic.
Oh, wow. So do you think they're almost like buying a trial? So it's like, oh, I don't know about paying $360 a year, but like, I'll give it a go one time. I'll see how it works.
Yeah, totally possible. That they could just see it as sort of like an unlocked trial, without a lot of limits, without time scarcity. But as you can imagine, tacking on extra $77 on a funnel like that definitely increases your average cart value.
Yeah, particularly if you're getting like 10, 15% of those people to take it at that point.
Yeah.
What was the most interesting thing you discovered while designing this funnel?
The most interesting thing was probably the marketing aspect to it, about how we promoted it. I don't know if those conversion rates would have held with straight cold traffic. The fact that this was essentially a warm traffic offer that I could give to people that was different than the trial. I think a lot of software people kind of screw that up. They only make the one trial and they keep beating you over the head. Hey, don't you want to take our trial? Don't you want to take our trial? Hey, it's a new day. Want to take our trial? And you have to be able to switch it up. So it was nice to have this secondary offer to present to people. But the marketing aspect, taking the free conversions off of our own website, but then coming up with a methodology to go through the podcast scenario and start promoting it there was really sort of what unlocked that and made that more than just a cool, you paid for a car payment or two. And hey, let's go find a nicer house.
Nice. What's the single biggest win you had?
Probably the biggest win I had through this process was being on a big podcast, in my opinion, because big podcast not only brings in a significant windfall, in terms of promotion, but the biggest thing I noticed about podcasts is it actually is kind of like a flywheel effect. So when you're on a big show, there's the direct revenue from being on that show, but then there's everyone that listens to that show that also has podcasts. And so I had basically trained myself to always say yes. I didn't care how big the podcast was, because every little micro one even has a following too. And so you get this sort of long tail effect from being on a big show where one big interview might net you 10 medium interviews and it might net you another 15 or 20 small interviews. All of those have a cumulative effect to promoting your funnel.
That's an excellent way to look at it and getting it out there. That's really cool. What was the biggest podcast you got featured on?
Mixergy was pretty big. I was on Mixergy twice with Andrew Warner. I remember that actually started back early, and what I did is I ended up redirecting on some of the traffic. But like still, even from the original interview in 2012, when I didn't have this funnel set up yet, but I was getting traffic to it, and people were saying, because I had a little hot jar, hey, how'd you hear about me, kind of thing. I still to this day occasionally get people replying to support and those old feedbacks saying, oh, I listened to you in your 2012 interview on Mixergy. And that to me like blows my mind, because think about when you get an affiliate to promote an offer for you. I mean, generally speaking, 72 hours after they mail, like it might as well have been, buried on page 10 of Google, right? Like it's over and done. And the fact that there's a lot more evergreen to these podcast episodes sometimes than people realize. And of course, then you get a backlink for SEO value and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, Mixergy was probably the biggest. Entrepreneur on Fire was fairly big as well.
Who's Entrepreneur on Fire? I don't know that name.
Yeah, John Lee Dumas. I think he's really slowed his roll. He used to do a podcast every day, roll on his show, and so it was sort of death by a thousand cuts. He got his downloads really ramped up and was able to significantly grow his audience in a couple of years. And so while that one didn't have as much sticking power as someone like Mixergy, it had a pretty large audience to get tapped into and plugged into real quick.
Cool. So which way around did this happen? Did you already have Contest Domination to sell and then you started doing the podcasts to sell it? Or did you kind of do the podcasts, start getting this flow of traffic and was like, dang, let's monetize this further and further?
Yeah, I definitely had Contest Domination first. And so that, again, MVP. So I had started, as that WordPress plugin, $4,500 on a credit card, test it out, see if it worked for lead gen myself. Had one friend.
All the best people got started on WordPress plugins.
Yeah, and then and then I had a friend that had a list of bloggers that was a couple years old, and I was like, hey, would you mail this? And he's like, whatever, I don't do anything with my list, sure. And I think we sold like 45 copies of the plugin or something. It wasn't astounding, but it was like, yes, people like this plugin. And then I hooked up with Mark Thompson, who now runs Pay Kickstart. And he helped me do a WSO launch back in the day on the Warrior Forum.
Oh, wow. Now there's a blast from the past. That's where I sold a lot of my WordPress plugins back in the day.
Yeah. And so then that soundbite originally got me on the first couple podcasts, because it was like, how did you do a launch? How did you go from, credit card debt to selling, I think we sold like $180,000 worth of the product the first time around. On that first launch with Mark Thompson, and our R1 in 2013 was much bigger. But that initial nugget got us to have the conversation about how we did the launch, which then got me some introductions to some podcast people. And then I was able to pivot the conversation from, hey, here's how I launched my product, to, hey, here's how you do a successful contest campaign, right? And then that allowed a much more natural, if you want to learn more about contests, not necessarily more about how to launch a WSO, but how to actually run a contest. And then that, as I said, you get one podcast, you get a bunch of feeder podcasts off of that. And that's what got the flywheel going. Excellent.
How many podcasts do you think you did in the end?
Ooh, that's a good question. Over the course of 2 years, I mean, I was doing at least a handful a month. I mean, sometimes I would do, 3 to 5 in a week. And a lot of those don't exist anymore, because I literally said yes to everything. People are like, you want to do a podcast? Yes. You haven't launched yet? I don't care. Yes. You have a big podcast?
Thinking yes. I was special and you were doing me a favor.
Well, I'm quite a bit more selective these days, but in the early days when I realized, hey, this is actually, I'm watching my traffic go up. I'm watching my SEO go up from having additional backlinks that were not affiliate. And I was watching this like long-term thing play out kind of by accident at first, because I only did like maybe 8 or 10 in the first year. But then once I realized, oh, hey, this is actually having a cumulative effect. And then I had Hotjar asking, how'd you hear about me? And, 70-80% of the answers were, I heard you on this podcast, or this podcast. It's like, hey, dummy, why don't you do what works?
Yeah,
do more of
do
it.
more of that stuff that's working.
Yeah. Funny. We always look at things sometimes. It's like, oh, that was an easy win. I don't want to do that. That was too easy. Maybe we should do something harder.
That brings us nicely on to our next question. What was the biggest mistake you made?
Switching checkout tools is not wise. Any funnel per se. On that one, it bit me a little bit too, because I was using a tool. Not sure if I want to name names, but I allowed Stripe and PayPal checkouts. And the tool I was using at the time, first of all, they charge way too much money for it. And secondly, the way they did PayPal subscriptions, if you ever left, you forfeited your PayPal subscriptions. So I would say the biggest mistake I ever had was using that tool.
Nice. Excellent. Where are you taking it next? Actually, I think this is possibly even the most interesting part of the story, because I know what the punchline is this entire podcast. What's next for you?
Well, so, Contest Domination was fantastic. And it's still out there, still creating success for people. But I realized a couple of things. One is, we worked with a lot of email service providers, the Infusionsoft's, Marlposts, Active Campaigns, the Awebers of the world. And I'd used quite a few of them, but I've been frustrated by many of them, specifically on deliverability. And so a number of years ago, I actually took the Contest Domination code base, forked it, dropped a bunch of stuff, and started rebuilding an email tool from the ground up, and then called that Campaign Refinery. And so for us going forward, I still have a huge amount of love and soft spot for Contest Domination in my heart, but a lot of my focus is on Campaign Refinery because it's really, really working. And not only it's scratching my own itch for email deliverability, but it's working out great for the clients we've been able to pick up so far.
Excellent. Do you want to drop a few hot stats about the Campaign Refinery results? Because I've always been super impressed by this. I know it's not totally relevant to this podcast, but I'm pretty sure people listening will care.
Yeah. So with Campaign Refinery, on average, our average customer 2 to 3 times increases their open rate on their emails. And then we have some customers that have as much as 25 times their open rate by using our tool, following our process, and really just running a healthier, more profitable, more productive email list.
That's fantastic. Cool. Okay, moving on to the next section of the show then. Moving on to the takeaway tactic. What's something just super actionable somebody can take away, apply to their funnel, apply to their business tomorrow, and start seeing an improvement?
Yeah, I think the biggest sort of takeaway action item for me after going through this experience was, I mentioned I did not have my funnel done. I think a lot of us think, oh, I have to have my whole funnel and my upsells and all these different products done and ready to go before I can start promoting. And for a launch, you obviously are the launch master. For a launch, that's true, right? You have to have it dialed in. You have to, have tested all the traffic, right? But I don't think that's true for most other funnels. I think the point is you need to test hooks, ideas, lead magnets, initial tripwire offers. Just do the sort of simple, most basic stuff. Because I launched a lead magnet before I had the $10 offer. I launched the $10 offer before I had all the rest. So there was, a 4 or 5 month period where the only thing I was selling in that funnel was a $10 thing, because I hadn't completed the other trainings and upsell videos, which is, kind of stupid in hindsight, but it got the leads flowing. It got the traffic sources established. And so just do the bare minimum to see if it even has any traction, and then start doing the long-term, seemingly unscalable stuff. I think podcasts are huge. So if all you have is a lead magnet, go start doing podcasts, fill in the offers after the fact.
That's an awesome share. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on Funnel Masters today, Travis. And also thank you for agreeing to include the Contest Domination funnel as a simulation in Simulatory when we launch it in November. I think people will get a lot of value out of seeing how the different moving parts work, being able to play with it and see how an opt-in form goes into like a tripwire offer and then an upsell from there.
Yeah, I'm happy to share, and I'm looking forward to checking out the software and helping promote it when it launches.
Cool. Thank you so much, Travis. Thanks for being on Funnel Masters.
My pleasure.
Thanks for watching Funnel Masters. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Coming up next on Funnel Masters.
People aren't going to give you their money without first giving you their time. I'm going to be talking about what I call a one-page VOD funnel that demolishes live webinars, auto webinars, and it's definitely something that people are moving towards. Either way, I think that's, video should be one of the main features in every single funnel, bar none. The real kind of key here in the product reveal is talking about features and benefits, not just features, but benefits as well. So what you really want to do is just go out there with a quick and dirty video and test the message as much as possible.